there's an increase, as I've said, over time. The salary inflation in India is quite high. It's 11 to 12 percentage points above what is happening in the U.S. and its nearshore partners. There's a high infrastructure cost. Power and water doesn't flow out of the spigots and the sockets on the wall in India like it does here. As a result, you have to put in place sophisticated power generation and battery backup scenarios. To give you another example, the operation I ran in Bangalore had two 1-megawatt generators running from diesel and half a megawatt hour battery backup in order to supplant the lack of power coming from the national grid. Just another indication here which talks a bit about some of the graft issues there. We also had to install quite a sophisticated filtering system to take the water out of the diesel, because if you water down diesel, you get more money for water than you would normally do. So you have to filter your diesel in order to run your generators, and run your generators in order to run your system. So significantly higher infrastructure costs than one is used to bearing here. And of course, as time's gone by, competition for people becomes very high, so staff attrition grows. Another interesting aspect of the culture is that, generally speaking, they never say no to an opportunity. So one thing to worry about here is, if you ask a question, be sure you're getting the answer to the question rather than they are reading between the lines and giving you the answer that they think you want to hear for the question. So in general, they never say no to an opportunity. Travel's hard. Travel's hard to get there. Planes usually arrive early in the morning and leave early in the morning. When you get into travel around India, it's not set up for the sorts of travels we're talking about. So a lot of hard travel for managers and technical resources backwards and forwards. If you don't travel and you don't become part of the team, that further decreases productivity in your outsourcing activity. Now, government bureaucracy is very, very slow, very, very slow. And as a result of that slowness, they've put together the SDP program to cut through many of those difficulties and package them in a support suite to help the offshore outsourcing organizations and business in the country. So they have responded to that. But if you go outside of those limited areas, you'll find it very difficult doing business there. And moving to culture clash, my experiences of the culture there are that they are very much different, 180 degrees away from the culture here, and that takes a lot of getting used to. It's a very interesting culture. A lot of personal development goes on when you try and uncover it, but it's very, very different to the way we do business here. And of course, unfortunately, as in many countries of the world, graft is ubiquitous. Every potential transaction you have to perform with respect to buying or selling, getting a license, importing a product, or getting some sort of license or permission to do something is an opportunity for corruption to occur. And just as an idea here, just as a thing to worry about, and as a U.S. citizen, as a U.S. company, there's a set of laws that require us not to involve ourselves in any form of graft anywhere in the world, the Foreign Corrupt Trade Practices Act. So that law applies to us wherever we are in the world. Now, I spend a fair amount of time on this slide. I'm going to go faster on the other two because I think I've touched on a number of the issues here that are duplicated to some degree or of another. So let's move off of India and move to China. Again, what worked? Well, again, an excellent supply of well-educated people. Again, lower costs than we're used to over here. Again, because of 20 years of evolution and focus, we've got excellent process capability, and again, an extremely supportive government for these activities. Again, very similar to you find in India. What didn't work so well, or what has peculiar challenges, again, is the time zone. Not quite the same time zone issues as India, a little closer in a sense, but still out of phase completely with the U.S. English challenge. The issue with India being a native English-speaking, and many schools teach only in English, whereas in China, English is very much a second language and leads to a lot of issues related to that. Again, similar salary inflation. Again, significant cultural differences, slightly, again, different than the Indian culture, but very definitely in the middle of Asian culture. Never say no to anything. And this is part of the culture, that you never say no. So again, when you're trying to get an answer to a question, you're trying to get a commitment, you need to look and read between the lines yourself to understand what are they saying. There's a lot of deference to management. Never interfere, never embarrass your manager, and those things tend to have an impact on the way you do business. Again, unfortunately, a huge amount of graft and corruption throughout the country, so you're again led back to those same types of issues. So now let's move away from an Asia and move over to a European perspective. Let's take Poland as a representative country. A lovely country, Krakow, a beautiful city. What works? Well, again, you can expect, there's a lot of focus in Western Europe on education, and you get well-educated people, a good supply of those well-educated people. Engineering and science is a very important area for East and West in that regard. Lower cost again, those costs are starting to grow, and again, because of learning on the back of all that great work that's been done over the last couple of decades, excellent process capability, excellent ability to develop high quality, high productivity software. Again, now moving over to the challenges, time zone challenge again. This one, again, a little closer to ours, but again, still anti-phase. I'll demonstrate that with a nice graphic in short order. English challenged, leadership challenged. I think what I mentioned here is the attitudes that have grown up in the last few hundred years and more recently under communist rule have tended to dampen the initiative people have, and that shows in the relationships. So that has a big bearing on the cultural issues that will impact the way we work. Graft, but to a lesser degree. Now, if I were talking about Russia, I would have to say graft has increased significantly in the last decade or so, but not so much in Poland, but it's there. And this is 3 examples here. We have 3 different examples of doing business overseas in different places. Okay, another area I'd like to sort of context switch, if I may, for just a minute here, to a growing trend in the development arena, and that is the growing trend of agile development methods. I think what, again, has been happening in the last 5 to 10 years is a flattening of the world in terms of connectivity and an intolerance for time to take to solve a problem. So here we are with a development of methods that came along to treat that issue in particular, and they're an agile method set. There are many different agile methods, maybe 20 different flavors. Many people practice them a bit from here, a bit from there, and they place together or put together their own custom software development life cycle based on agile. But the basic characteristics are the same, and that is they are rapid, they are very customer-driven, and they're designed to be very high value creation. Productivity is enhanced through this activity, especially for small to medium-sized products. And it's a perfect fit with the service leadership focus that you see emerging today as more and more organizations attempt to differentiate themselves, getting closer and being more customer-driven. It's a perfect fit. Agile methods are a perfect fit for these activities. The methods, however, depend on a fair degree of time proximity. Trying to get very rapid cycles of learning between customer and developer. And so with the advent of instant messaging, close now includes the time zone part. So it's very important that work is done in the same time zone. And therefore, time zone proximity is becoming a very key value proposition to developing business solutions today in an ever rapid world. To give an illustration of this time zone mapping using some of the countries we've talked about before, look at this picture. In the U.S. census, a U.S.-centric model, so at the very top level here we have the work week for the U.S. being from, let's say, notionally 8 to 5, and that's indicated in green. But now when you start to look at the working day in India, in China, in Poland, you notice all of them are anti-phase, and therefore they're unable to take advantage of this proximity, this rapid cycle of learning scenario that current methods are so dependent upon. And in contrast, if you look at the nearshore partners from a U.S.-centric point of view, they would clearly be Canada, Mexico, and even further down into Latin America. But you see that the time zones are almost identically on top of the time zone for the U.S. So you get the benefit